what I have noticed is that so many people, no matter what's happening, it's something new and they get scared and they get paralyzed. Instead of just shifting and figure out, okay, what do I do in this season? They kind of just quit.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you can do. Just
It is the
lean
worst thing.
in, figure out what can, because investing in real estate, it's always a good time. You just have to figure out what's working now, how to do this, what to stop doing, what to start doing. So
Yep.
I love that you've made it through all of these seasons and you didn't quit. Without Fear of Her Future podcast is for women who are passionately pursuing financial freedom, using multiple streams of income and real estate to accomplish their goals. We're here to empower you to be brave and dream big. Design a life that you love that inspires others to do the same. I'm your host, Tresa Todd, founder of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and author of the book, Without Fear of Her Future. Over the past 2 years, I've had over 300,000 women join my masterclass, where I teach women how to become successful real estate investors. Today, we are sitting down with Liz Faircloth, co-founder of Real Estate Investher and the Derosa Group. In 2004, Liz and her husband bought their very first investment property. Since then, they have grown their business to over 1,500 units and $60 million of residential and commercial assets throughout the East Coast. Along the way, Liz met Tresa, and together they formed Real Estate Investher, a mastermind group for women in real estate. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tresa, for having me, and so excited to be here with you.
Well, I am so excited to have you. I know our listeners are absolutely going to love hearing from you today. Very, very impressive. So tell me, how long have you been investing and how did you get started?
Yeah, it's almost 17 years. I'm
Wow.
dating myself, but yeah, at the time, my boyfriend and I, now husband, started investing together. I was getting my degree in social work, getting my master's degree in social work, wanted to be a therapist, open my own practice. And I went straight on from college to graduate school. So I was in my mid 20s. Now, I met my then boyfriend. We started chatting, talking about our lives. And at the same time, my brother-in-law, who was the only entrepreneur I knew, didn't even know what an entrepreneur was growing up, handed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad and said, you really need to read this. And so that really, like so many, kind of shifted so many things for me in the sense of like things I never knew that was possible, in
Yeah.
terms of passive income and just all those sort of things. So it really shifted my trajectory. I actually ended up getting a job in consulting and really doing sales, because in that book, it says one of the most important skills you need to have to be successful in entrepreneurship and certainly investing is sales. So,
Yes.
and at the same time, my husband and I started taking classes. We took about a year and a half of our local REIA, which was DIG right in Philadelphia. And we bought our first duplex after lots of door knocking and calling for rent ads and just old school, 2004 strategies, to be honest. So that was kind of how we got our start buying a duplex after lots of no's and door knocking and really walking for dollars.
Yes. Boy, that's exactly how I got started as well. I absolutely love it. Wouldn't take anything for those days and what I learned doing those real tangible things.
Agreed. And it really starts to, give you that experience of, going after what you want and building upon what you want. And we didn't have money. We had no experience. We were in our 20s. Him and I had no kind of like reason to start, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Yes. I remember all of the conversations and getting back in my car after a conversation and thinking, oh, I should have said this, or I wish I had said that, or why in the world did I say this? So you just learn so much when you actually get out there and do the things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gives you that real life experience rather than just going to the local meetings and just talking about investing,
the theory.
right?
Yeah. It's actual experience versus theory. Yeah. Well, what are some key lessons that you've learned to get this far in the investing game?
Yeah, so after that, my husband and I we got married in '05, and then I started really working, in consulting, and he really took on the role. We were a lot of different hats around along the way, but initially I was the one like, let me keep working, let me, so one
Yeah.
of us makes some money, and then we started our business. So learn lessons. There's been so many, and I think we were really able to scale and grow when we got focused. And I was just recording a podcast today about this, and so many times, especially maybe it was naivety, maybe it was youth, maybe it was lack of experience. It could be in all of those things together. But you could get very distracted in this business, and
Yeah.
especially as the economy shifts. I mean, '08 to 2010 to
Yeah.
COVID. It's like each time, as I've seen different things happening in our economy, our local economy, national economy, our global economy, it changes strategy, right? It
Yep.
changes some of the things. So one, you have to align with what's happening, but you also can't get distracted. And I guess there's a little bit of a balance. So one thing I've learned is the power of focus,
Hmm.
and really creating like a proof of concept, right? Like a rinse and repeat. And in a lot of ways, when you start to scale, it should be boring. I mean, you're tweaking things. You should be
Yes.
versus literally starting. I mean, we got involved in 5 different niches simultaneously. You can't be good at anything. I don't
Right.
care who you are. So those are really big learned lessons. And then we made it through '08. We had some properties we had to hold as rentals. We ended up having I'm sorry, we wanted to flip, but we held as rentals. And we got just beat up a lot because
Yeah.
we didn't get focused. And then it was 2010 when we really started to say, what are we having success with? And then small
Yeah.
multis was that for us, and we started raising money, and we really built our business with other people too, in terms of investors. So not that it's all perfect now. I mean, just because you're scaling and you're growing, you have your own challenges,
Yeah. You
but
just
at
have,
least you're focused.
yes. I love it. Love it. Talking about just the different errors that you go through. I've only been doing this since 2017, but just even that, every year is a little bit different.
Hmm.
And what I have noticed is that so many people, no matter what's happening, it's something new, and they get scared and they get paralyzed. Instead of just shifting and figure out, okay, what do I do in this season? They kind of just quit.
Yeah,
And that's the worst thing you can do. Just
it is
lean
the worst thing.
in, figure out what can, because investing in real estate, it's always a good time. You just have to figure out what's working now, how to do this, what to stop doing, what to start doing. So
Yep.
I love that you've made it through all of these seasons, and you didn't quit, just kept shifting.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that you start to say is that's what keeps you going is not the ability not to quit. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of moments that were for most people really good times to quit.
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
And you start to say, and it's also what you're learning from every experience. If you start to have a lot of different experiences, you also have to say, okay, what is mine to own here? Like what responsibility am I taking in this
Yeah.
contractor taking money or properties going, over schedule, over budget,
Yeah.
the long list of things that can go on, especially when you're renovating properties and you're in that business. But you have to take ownership and you have to shift something so you don't
Oh.
keep repeating it. There's things we have control over, but like ultimately, what do you have control over?
Yes. Oh,
So
wow. That is so good, Liz. So good. So good. Okay. So now you co-founded the real estate company with your husband. So tell us what is it like working so closely with your husband?
yeah, right. We're actually writing a book right now, investing with your spouse, because I feel like we've been through so many different things and so many seasons together.
Yeah.
And you really so many people you see it, Tressa, I'm sure in your community. Um, this is an investment business. This is not something like, oh, I'm getting involved in a club. Like this is a big commitment of time and money
Yes.
and energy. So it's
Mhm.
really tough to do secretly or not to have your spouse to support on some level.
Yeah.
So it's a big conversation. So, we over the years have like literally worked hand in hand. I've worked strategically in the business. I've worked, same with him. So we've had to wear a lot of different hats. And there was a point around '08, which the market didn't help, the crash,
Yeah.
quite honestly. And we were kind of living off savings. I had quit my job the same time the market crashed. And we really weren't making enough with our rentals or, anything in term. We were just like, let's live on savings and go for it. We had no
Yeah.
kids and we are living below our means.
Yep.
But he said to me, and it was a really stressful time for us emotionally and financially. He's just like, if we don't change something, we're going to get a divorce. And that was really, you don't use that word lightly, right? I mean, some
Yeah.
people may, but we never did. We were married a few years. And so that was very like,
Yeah.
and we didn't like come together to grow a business. There was a lot of other reasons that
Right.
brought us together. So, over the years, you start to say like, what's working and what's not, and how do we do this dance together? And so now we, in a place, especially now writing a book together, right? That's a whole other great material that we have now,
Yeah.
literally in real time. But you start to say, what are our roles? What do we each own? And let's really be clear on that, staying in each other's lanes, and really, really, really appreciating and leveraging each other's strengths and letting the rest go. And that, and then we really try to separate and have time to talk about. I mean, we schedule everything. So we schedule time to talk about our businesses and our investments and what's working, what's
Mhm.
not, what do we need to
Yeah.
tweak. And then we have like date nights, and we really, and we've actually incorporated morning dates where we do, like, we read a scripture and we read just read something about our being, in relationship,
I
and we have it
love
over a cup of
it.
coffee. I have young children, so it's hard to have that moment as soon as they get home from school. So that's been really helpful. But we keep working on our relationship, and we keep um, creating the time in our schedules to do that. That's really, really important.
Oh, I agree. Liz, that is so much wisdom. Great tips. I mean, this is real life. I mean, investing, really anything that we do in life is tough, but investing is. And when you're working with your spouse, taking that time to do the morning dates and go on the dates, but also, also time to, you know, talk about business and what we're going to do and who makes the decisions and all
Yeah.
that. So just thanks for sharing. I absolutely love that. And so y'all have been through some things together since you started, because you did start in 2004 and then you were investing through 2008 recession. So do these challenges look anything like those challenges that we're facing today, or is it completely different?
I think it is completely different. I think even COVID, where what happened there was just
Hmm.
this crazy, like no one expected,
Yeah.
what happened with real estate and how hot the market got,
Yes.
or maybe some people did, but it was very interesting to see it unfold. I think when we started scaling our multifamily business, it was still kind of like a secret, if you will. Not a secret, but there was competition. And then COVID happened. And it's only increased, in terms of crowdedness, especially in the multifamily space, small, large. We look for larger buildings, value add, class C type of buildings in up and coming areas, or more like submarkets or
Hmm.
tertiary markets, if you will. Um, that became just more competitive. So the competition, in a sense, has only increased over the years. In
Yeah.
terms of like interest rates and those sort of things. I mean, yeah, that does impact it, right? Especially if you're getting into buildings with floating debt, and it's not fixed, that could really hurt you right now.
Yeah.
Especially if you've underwritten. Our last project was close to 670 units, so if you're underwriting against and one little percentage point, that makes a big
Yeah,
difference. It makes a big difference on any
absolutely.
building, but it makes a big difference when you're underwriting those sort of things. So, we've seen those shifts, but I think there's always an opportunity to create, like, where is there like a niche within the niche, right? So if it's
Mhm.
large multifamily, where is there a market that maybe that's an opportunity that not as it's not as crowded, and so you're always constantly looking at where are the eyeballs not seeing opportunity, and I think that's
Yeah.
still the case right now. So yeah, in terms of like kind of economic conditions, we were also heavily invested, doing a lot of flips at the time. In '08, we're not actively doing any flips right now. People could be doing well with flips. It was a business that we did sporadically, and unless we have a really good partner, running timelines and running the budget and really managing those key things and buying it at the right price and then selling at the right price. Flips are not as forgiving as rentals, in a sense,
Mhm.
unless you've built a business around it and you know what you're doing and you're
Yep.
like. But him and I, in a lot of ways, learned over the handful of deals we did with flips. We were like, we need a partner who could be running these projects to the T, because that's what you need to
Yeah.
do. So, yeah, I mean, economic conditions always change, right? And but you need to
Mhm.
have a sense of where can I thrive,
Yeah.
And also, where can I protect my wealth? Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I was thinking about protecting our wealth in '08. Like, we were just like, what can we as much as we can consume? So now it's like,
Yes.
how do we best protect what we
Yep.
have, right? And
Yep.
what we're invested in, and make a return on our money, of course. But
Yeah.
not that we're not growing or growing our business or growing our wealth still. I'm not saying we're there. I think there's always opportunity to grow, but I have a different, I mean,
A different
different person, right?
mindset. I
Yeah.
agree. I think that we evolve as investors. I mean, in the beginning, I think that we have to start out with what I call hustle and grind. You got to do the harder things. You got to go out and what you just talked about, door knocking, getting those deals, finding those deals yourself, learning, flipping all of those properties, which is I love flipping. I mean, it's a great payoff, but it's also work. And then you get to a place where you can become more of a passive investor and you're not having to do all of that hustle and grind. And so I think that is the goal for all of us, that we have to be willing, unless we just have a bunch of money when we start. And that's awesome if you do. But most, the average, especially woman, does not have that. And so we have to start out being willing to do the harder things, do what other people are not willing to do. And then we start building that wealth, and then we get in a position to where we don't have to do the really hard things anymore. And that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you do that as soon as you can? I mean, I think that
Yeah.
the hustle is important, right? And it kind of helps you become who you are. And
Mhm.
then you start to say, I'm alone in this business. I'm not going to be amazing at everything, especially this is a very there's a lot of details. I mean, it's not rocket science, but there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle, whether it's on the financing side, whether it's the underwriting side or analyzing side, or whether it's the for selling the actual property and repositioning it. There's a lot of moving parts, so you can't be like a rock star at all
At
of them.
all of it.
And I
I
think the
agree.
sooner people, especially women, get right that where their core genius is and what they bring to the table. Is it a skill? Is it time? Is it
Mhm.
money? And what do they even want? Like what their
Yes,
lifestyle is, because they might be able to
absolutely.
get there with a couple passive investments,
Mhm.
or maybe they need to do it more actively, right?
Yeah.
It just depends.
Yeah. And finding a partner, if we don't have a spouse that is there for us,
Yeah,
then finding some business partners, finding a, even another woman or whatever that you can. I love that. I
yeah,
love sharing responsibility, having the
absolutely.
things to bounce off of. But the most important thing is I have only got my set of skills. So I need to partner with others that have a different set of skills. And we're just going
Yeah.
to go much further, much quicker.
Yeah, and one of the things I always recommend. So during my consulting time, I was a management consulting, so I had an expertise in a personality assessment. It's called the predictive index. So I see the lens of people through different personality traits differently than like maybe an average person, just because I literally ran hundreds and hundreds of these tools for companies and
Ah,
leaders. So for a decade, that's what I was doing as we were growing our company, and then
yeah.
so my point saying that is a really good tip for people is like, there's a lot of specifics of personality, but someone more task centered or people centered is really a helpful, like, almost like a option, like where if you're someone who's more people oriented and relationship driven, that's one thing, and that's one side of the business. And then there's a more operational person, more task oriented, more
Mhm.
technical. It's really good to partner with that other person,
Yes.
and also the part of being a risk taker or a cautious person.
Uh-huh.
If you're more of a risk taker, more of a creative person, more out of the box, that's awesome. But
You need
you're
somebody to
probably gonna get
rein
into
you
stuff
in
that you
every once in
shouldn't.
a while. Yep.
So you want to find that compliment, what's fascinating, Tressa, is that I'm actually very similar to my husband, and so we saw a gap on our team as we grew. In terms of partnerships, we really saw a gap from an ops perspective, and we really needed
Yeah,
that person who was much more operationally focused.
yeah,
And then when I met Andressa, who was a business partner in real estate and now with Investher, it was like her and I are very different, very complementary, very different.
yeah, that's
And
perfect.
so, we don't always attract two different people, but we need them and they need us.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I so agree. Well, okay, so I wanna you also mentioned earlier that you and your husband are in multifamily, that's your thing now. So how did you decide that that was the strategy for the 2 of you?
We got kind of involved, like I said, in lots of different niches and in a little bit all over the place where we were flipping. And the market that we were in at the time, so we were really focused on New Jersey, and we still have properties in New Jersey, but most of our first many years we were doing all deals in a very specific, in Trenton, New Jersey, actually. So it was an up and coming
Yeah.
city, what have you, and most of the properties there are older homes, older properties, single family row homes. So, and there's a bunch of small multis. So some people are in markets, they're looking at that. There's just, they can't find like a multifamily, right? Or there's
Mhm.
just not in the market we were in. And we really knew that we were, and really focused on, there was a ton of more dilapidated multis. So
Yeah.
we really kind of got involved in that niche in particular because one, there was so many of them. And two, as you start to get into single family homes versus multifamily, multifamily has, again, I can go bat to bat with people, but has a lot more advantages in the sense of, now there's 4 units, right? So if I have a vacancy, 75% of my building is occupied versus 0%.
Yes. Yeah.
Single family has its advantages where some people have like a single family portfolio and
Yeah.
it does very well, maybe more in like the new construction, or you can see those strategies work. We were in older homes, older properties, and there was always something wrong with them. And, it just seemed like our single family rentals always were tougher to manage in some ways. Although, that's sometimes it's one tenant. So and you
Yeah.
can argue that it's actually easier versus four tenants.
Uh-huh.
But multifamily really allows for so many, you're hedging your risk and you're really mitigating your risk, especially as people are, looking for good quality housing and workforce housing and properties that are safe and nicely done.
Yeah.
We always did a good job on our renovations. But yeah, we got involved in like rentals, and we were always involved in long-term rentals. And
Mhm.
that was our niche. And then really zoned in on multis and then said, where can we really take this? And then we started to look at other, geographies. We were managing everything ourselves, and then we started to started to look elsewhere from New Jersey for a lot of reasons about 6, 7 ish years ago, and then really scaled our portfolio when we bought outside the state of New Jersey.
Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. So in those early days, how were you funding all these deals?
Yeah, so we I tell you one of the things that my God bless them, but my parents, both sets of parents were, middle class families. They
Uh-huh.
both had their homes free and clear though, and they were pretty moderate homes. They weren't like, but this was like, you got to remember at 2006, before the market
Yeah.
crash, banks were doing things that they're not doing
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
So legally, of course, but
Yeah.
we got a line of credit. My parents both kind of loaned us money through their homes, the equity
Fantastic.
that was in their homes, to get us going and get our start. Our first property we bought, my father loaned us money, $30,000. And like both of our sets of parents were like middle class. Neither of them came from a lot of money, so it wasn't
Uh-huh.
like they were like, oh, whatever happens with the homes that we're loaning you. I mean, it was like a big deal. Like this is their
Yeah,
one home,
that's
literally.
yeah, yeah, you gotta be successful for
So again, it wasn't like we came from these two home,
Yeah.
two families that had just money to lose. And then that kind of got our start with some properties. And then we always kind of creatively financed a lot of deals. And
Mhm,
then you start to, make some money here in a flip and then you redeploy
mhm.
it.
Yeah.
That happened. And then we really got focus of like, we started to get, we had about 30, 40 units at the time, and 2010, and we sort of say like, let's start to, I don't know how, raising private money. Like my husband actually wrote a book, Raising Private Capital. There wasn't even
Uh-huh.
like a term, but we did know in terms of creative finance, like how can
Yeah.
we partner with others?
Yes.
And
Just
so we
common
started learning
sense,
about
a
private
lot of
lending
common sense. Yeah.
and equity, and really grew our business by those two formats. Like whether someone lent us the money for maybe a fix and flip or a new construction, we pull their money out and obviously pay them back the loan, or on the equity side. And you have to be careful of that because we're syndicators now where they're passive, right? So there's
Mhm.
obviously, you file with the SEC and you have to be very careful, making sure you file correctly. Early on, we had active partners. So we were active, they were active. And that's the key when you're working on both from an equity side. So they might put money in, we didn't put money in, but they were also active in other ways. So that's really how we grew our business, is with active partners and
Okay.
with other people's money.
Yeah. Okay, so now I read where you were able to turn $30,000 into this empire that you have now. Was that first 30,000, was that the loan from one of your
Yes.
parents?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean,
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I think about it now and I'm so grateful. You really become very present to, my parents were they believed in me and they believed in
yeah.
us. And I think the work ethic, I didn't learn business strategies, but I learned the value of money. I learned
Mhm.
the value of hard work. I learned the value of saving,
Yes.
and so I learned a lot of that. My parents, our backgrounds, from Italian, and you learn a lot of different things from like family and your word is your honor, and just a lot of
Yeah.
things you start to get from your upbringing and your traditions. And I got all that passed along. And so what came along with that 30,000 was the kind of trust and faith that my father and mother had in us.
Mhm.
And again, it was a big deal and I felt
Yeah,
very
you don't wanna
grateful.
let them down. Yeah.
We did it right though, Tressa. And I always say, if you're gonna, and my mother-in-law loans us money, has loaned us money. And we paid her back. She's a partner in different things. So are my parents. So the key though is that you treat your family as though they're any other private investor,
Yeah.
whether an equity partner or a lender. You do not do anything on a handshake. Everything
Yep.
is in writing, and you also treat them and give them the updates as though you would
Mhm.
with anyone.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And so yeah, it was about a 6% interest on the 30,000. So it
Oh,
was a great interest. It's like
I just
this is
love
lovely.
that.
So we
Yeah.
paid him back in full. We ended up selling that property and moving to New Jersey and paid him back that loan. But yeah, you do. I think that's the most important thing because you can create real win-wins for people. And I
That's
think
right.
real
Yeah.
estate is an amazing vehicle right now, and you can create a win for someone in your family and for you. But you can't take that lightly, right?
Yeah.
One is protecting their money and two is making them money, but both are
Absolutely.
important. They
Yeah.
want their principal back,
100%. Yeah. That's awesome. If they're yeah. If they're willing to give it, then my goodness, it should be so important to us. Priority to making sure that we pay back any money that we ever borrow. That's so important.
And if
So
there's a circumstance, like I remember a project, we really got our teeth knocked in on a couple properties, 2013-ish, and it was a couple mixed use properties, like pretty big mixed use,
mhm.
4,000 square feet, in Trenton. And I remember just like, we got money stolen from us. Contractor walked away. Two contractors walked away.
Uh,
The budget went over. The
yep.
timeline went over. And when those things happen, your costs go over. And
Yeah.
so you refinance the property, you get it done. But we owed, and my father had lent us. I think he lent us 50,000 on that property, and had expected to get his 50,000 back plus interest.
Right.
And we couldn't. We refinanced. We were able to like kind of get the project complete. But we had almost, I think it was around 25,000 we still owed him because we couldn't make it whole with the refinance. So we put
Uh-huh.
a note together, I mean, an agreement together of what that looked like, what interest was occurring over
Mhm.
the time, and got him paid back with all the interest that he was owed within probably about a year. But that stuff happens,
Yes, it
and and
does.
and it
Yeah.
could be happening to someone in your family, or it happens to someone who's not your family.
Yeah.
And the key is communication,
Yep.
and the key is doing whatever it takes to be upfront. Say, listen, this is what happened, and
Yep.
this is how I'm going to make it right. People
Exactly.
don't want your problems, but they want your solutions.
Yes. I love it. I
So
love it.
we've
I
worked
love
with
it.
a lot of investors. We have over 400 investors now. So the chances of something happening on a project is going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yep, and it's
So
how you handle it. Or, do you do the right thing? And you're saying, I agree with all of it. Communication, honesty, and most people will give us grace, and as long as they know they're gonna eventually get their money back. But,
correct.
what you see a lot of times in this business is people, they ghost when they don't know what to do. And, that's the worst thing that we could do. That's gonna ruin our
Absolutely.
reputation. It's also gonna ruin our confidence in ourselves.
And it really
So,
doesn't solve anything. Like think
no.
of like any problem that I've never dealt with, like it doesn't go away.
No, it does not. It
It
probably
never
gets
goes
bigger.
away. Right? You
That's
think about
right.
anything we're all working through. It's like
Yeah,
it's just going to come back. So
yeah. Well, I know that, of course, I have the Women's Real Estate Investors Network. You have Investher. So let's talk a minute. How would you advise women to start investing in our current market right now?
I'm a big fan of women getting really clear on where they want to be first.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, so many people, and I'm sure you get it too, Tresa, like women are concerned about what market they should invest in, what asset class should they invest in? Should I buy short-term rental? Should I buy a long-term rental? Should I flip properties? And that can get very overwhelming. And I think those are really important questions. They're just not the first few questions. So I always advise, any woman and any person for that matter to really get clear on like, where do they want to be in 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Like more importantly, like what does that look like? What's that lifestyle? What kind of money goals do they have?
Yep.
That's always front and center to me. The second thing is then to say, okay, what do I bring to the table? Like what are my skills? What are my experiences? What is my personality? Like, what do I love to do? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
has come so easily to me that I don't even think is great, but is really hard for other people.
Yeah.
To really get clear on that before you start talking about asset classes and geography and markets and what's the right strategy in today's market. Those are really important ones. I'd say thirdly, though, when we get down to like brass tactics of real estate investing, I would say, there's always a time to actively invest and there's always a time to passively invest. So if you have money on the side and deals are not penciling out, and you can't make a deal work. Number one, how can you look at it differently or creatively? Had a woman on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Oh, I bought a duplex off the MLS." I said, "That's unheard of." She's like, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't use it as a duplex. I use it as a luxury short-term rental." And
Oh,
the amount of revenue that I was able to get from that one property was 5 times what a duplex would get. So
yeah.
I think that type of creativity in
Mm-hmm.
today's conversions and like, how can I look at this property differently
Yep.
is absolutely necessary. Even more so than when I started. I mean, honestly,
I
I think
agree.
it's everything now. And I think the amount of opportunity to convert commercial to residential, there's a housing shortage everywhere. Everywhere there's a need for housing in terms of like good quality, affordable housing.
Yep.
There'll always be a need for that. How do you solve
Yes,
that
there
problem?
absolutely.
So that would be my next thought. And then you can start to say, okay, how can I not do this alone? And that's where community is so important,
Mhm,
which I know you believe in too, because you can't know it all. So have that community, have
mhm.
multiple communities that you can tap into and get the resources, get the
Yes.
ideas, and not do it alone.
Yes, 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 I agree, I agree. Okay, so, how can our listeners hold themselves accountable for success if they are especially investing solo?
It's hard to hold yourself accountable. I think. I think the key is to create habits. I think that always helps.
Mhm.
I think scheduling yourself,
Yep.
putting yourself in your schedule. Boundaries is critical. Saying no. Everyone,
Mhm.
a lot of women just say yes to everything,
Yeah.
me included. It's something I'm working on. Is boundaries. To be honest with you, I think it's something we really need more of. So I think holding yourself accountable in the sense of like, what are you scheduling, and are you honoring your word to
Yes.
yourself is a great place to start. I also believe though it's really really helpful to have people who can see your blind spots when you can't.
Mhm.
That's why we're not on the earth by ourselves,
I agree. Yeah.
we're with others for that reason. Um, and I don't like it all the time when I get called out or someone that's close to me says something, hey, but then I reflect, I'm like, they're right. And I really
Yeah.
need to do better here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And have grace with yourself,
Yeah.
So
I agree. You had just mentioned community, and I think community is so important because we weren't meant to do this alone. And it's hard enough when you have people when you're just out there by yourself. We need somebody to bounce our ideas off of, somebody to encourage us when we're discouraged, and somebody to help us to see something in a different light. When we are in a situation where we just don't see how we can make it work, and somebody else can say, "Hey, have you thought about making this a boutique short-term rental?" Just
right.
mentors and community that can help you, in all of those areas.
Because we're not gonna. I think women have become really. I think we're really good at doing things ourselves, like pounding it out and doing it ourselves. Like
Mhm.
I think women are masters at that in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, and I don't think that's going to get us what we really want on our own terms and the
Yeah.
lifestyle that we actually yearn for, which is peace
Yeah.
and balance
Absolutely.
and doing things on your own accord and having the time and the finances to do whatever you want to do when you want to do
Yes.
it.
Yes,
Most
yes,
people most
yes.
people get into this business for that reason.
I agree.
So, it's tough to do that by yourself.
Yes,
It
it
just
is.
is.
So do you think that women make good investors?
Yeah, statistically, women outperform
Yeah,
men in terms of investing.
I know.
What I've seen, and I think women make amazing investors. I think, um, there's a lot of different statistics you see, but women, from an outperforming perspective, I think there's a cautiousness.
Mhm.
And while women may kind of don't might take longer to make that decision or kind of jump into something. Again, totally being general. Some women jump in really quickly,
Yeah.
but statistically and just, in general, usually it's the right decision. It's usually the right
Yep.
investment.
Yep.
So I think women make amazing investors. And I
Yeah.
think the need for us to elevate our financial house and,
Mhm.
and to really not just elevate, but to really think about, how do I set myself up and the next generation up?
Yeah.
It's the number one reason women invest in real estate is
Yeah.
is for generational wealth, not to
Absolutely.
buy a Ferrari. I mean, if you want to buy a
Yes,
Ferrari,
I
that's
agree.
nice.
Yep.
Things are great, and I'm all about if something brings you joy, go for it. But it's usually not the biggest reason women are looking to buy, assets and invest. It's to take care of the next generation.
I
So
agree. I so agree. And I also think one reason that women make fantastic investors is because I think women are about creating those win-wins. We're less likely to just think about ourselves, but we're thinking about all the other people that we're in business with. And those are what continue those long-term relationships.
correct. And that's
Yeah.
really key right now. I mean, you
Yeah.
can Google how to flip a house, but to be able to jump into a community in a group or somewhere that they have your back to say, "Hey, who do you know here? Who do you know there?"
Mhm.
That's you can't Google that. I mean, you can get it
That
on the yellow pages, but right, you can't Google like amazing resources that Tresa can connect you to, or myself,
yeah,
or other people that have been in this business.
absolutely.
Like that's a value. That's a
Mhm.
value.
So what has inspired you to focus on women empowerment with Real Estate Invest Her?
Sure. So, at the same time, I had my first kiddo, who's now 9. I left my corporate work and I was working with my husband. And I have to tell you, in that journey, which I know a lot of women can relate to, you start to have, kiddos. And I was like traveling all the time as a consultant, helping in our business, working in our business investments. And I had my son and I left that work and I really lost myself. I was like,
Oh,
this is like I love being
yeah,
home with a newborn and I love this little kid who I waited a
yeah,
long time to have. But is this it? And you start to
yeah.
especially for someone who's, I retiled our bathroom, our kitchen. I mean, I got involved with some funky things, Tressa. So I was trying to find myself and I loved working with my husband, but I also came from consulting in my own business. So I really wanted to do something again on my own. And that gave me identity, gave me a purpose
Mhm.
beyond mom, wife, right?
Yeah,
And all the other things. So at the same time, I simultaneously met Andressa and we started to become really good friends. We started flipping properties together and doing a bunch of deals together. And when we get together, we'd be like at a Panera or we go to like a meetup or we go to like conferences. And at that time, especially in like '08 ish, oh, no, I'm sorry, not '08. That's a long time ago. 2018, that time frame, we go to conferences. There's like one woman speaking and she's usually on a panel and
yeah,
she's usually talking about like being a woman in investing, right? And then
yeah,
and there's a conversation that needs to be had, right? Because women bring so many unique things. But I wanted to see her talking about raising money or doing deals or negotiating or whatever her thing was, right? Whatever her
yep,
expertise was.
yep.
So there was just a miss there, and I'm like, we're like, there's got to be more women in this business. We didn't know
Yes.
them, but we knew that they were out there, and so
Mhm.
we said, let's start a podcast. And it was 5 years ago. Let's just interview just women. I was even told from a good friend of mine that we'd run out of women to interview. There's not that many investors. It's not very big within women. And we would be really struggling for guests. And, I don't know about you, but I'm not struggling for guests. And
Exactly.
right. So 300 what episodes later. And that really gave us our go with the podcast. And then we started, a Facebook community and we have 55
Yeah.
meetups across the country where women come
Ah,
together and we have our conference coming up in May and, just ways for women to build community, not do it
yeah,
alone.
yeah,
And we also have our membership, which women ask. I'm sure you get Tressa, like, what do you guys do? What else can you do to help me? And so we
yes.
developed a membership mastermind group for women that are a little more experienced. So yeah, it's interesting, right? We created it out of a need, and we weren't
Yeah,
sure if there was a need, but
yeah,
5 years later, there is a need, and I think
absolutely,
it's very
absolutely.
exciting to be part of.
Well, I love what you are doing for women. I love it, love it, love it.
Same.
It's changing their lives.
Yeah,
and their
same for
children's
you.
lives and all of that. So absolutely love it. Okay, I want you to talk about your book. Tell everyone where they can get this book.
Oh, sure. The one we've published, the only woman in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
we published a book about 2 years ago. Ashley Wilson is the person who compiled everything. She's like the author of it, and Investor published it. And she's a syndicator. She's a multifamily investor. She's got some great things going. But what we did is we highlighted 20 women's stories, and it's their journeys from all different types of investing, all different challenges that they had, from homelessness to mental health to fill in the blank of all the things that
Oh,
women deal with and go through, and how they kind of overcame those obstacles to create the life that they have, and to continue to create it. So but yeah, it's called The Only Women in the Room. And so
only
we're
women in the room.
shifting
Love
that
it.
concept of getting to these meetings and these conferences and not being the only women in the room.
Yes.
So
Yes. Okay, and then when does the book that you and your husband are writing, have you got a date that's releasing yet, or y'all still
yes,
working on it?
we're pushing very, very hard and forward to release it this fall. So we're going to be releasing it this fall through Investher as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's become like a little bit of a I feel like as I write, I'm getting like it's therapy, but
And
it's going
what
to be
is the
full
name
of
of that book again?
it's going to be called Investing in Us.
Investing in us. Oh, love that little play on words. Love it,
Yeah, and
love
and
it.
really what it's gonna be all about is whether you're growing your portfolio or getting involved in real estate investing. It's gonna be for that couple who really wants to set themselves up for success. So it's gonna be much more like a workbook. It's gonna be like very, very
Yeah.
how can you not have that as a workbook?
Yes.
To have the conversations. And obviously we'll be weaving in our story in real estate as the way we've worked together. But I think it's gonna be very applicable for everyone
Oh,
who
well,
works together.
I definitely will be watching for that.
Thank you.
Well, Liz, we always like to ask our guests for 3 takeaways. So, what 3 things would you advise an investor or an entrepreneur who is looking to be brave and grow, or is perhaps feeling stuck where they are?
Okay, number one, I would say you schedule what you value.
Mhm.
So if you want to shift something in your life, make sure you're scheduling it and you're
Oh,
putting you on that schedule. So that's number one.
yep.
Number two, I'd say the power of focus. Don't get distracted. Ask yourself, where have I had success? And ask yourself, how can I repeat that success without beyond just myself, right? So maybe that's a partner, a team, but really get do the work to figure out where you've had success. If you're brand new, say, where have I had success in my life? I
Yeah.
mean, we've all had success. It may not be in real
Mhm.
estate, but we all have had success we can build upon. That will give you insight into your skills, your experience, your personality. Thirdly, is don't give up. It seems so cliche, but honestly, if you keep at it and don't give up, like really just keep tweaking and shifting. Okay, that didn't work. That's another
Mhm.
way that doesn't work. What can I learn? How can I do this differently? You will get there. You will get there eventually.
Yep.
We didn't get to our goals in our, I think 5 years we wanted to, be making all this money.
Yes.
Human naiveness,
Yes.
you get to your goals when you're supposed to get to them,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't mean
Absolutely.
that it's because you haven't achieved it doesn't mean you're not going to.
Yep.
So
I think so many people, think that are going to, be driving the Lamborghinis and living in the mansion 5 years, and that's just not the reality of it, but it's still the best reality ever, the truth is still great, but, Lamborghinis and mansions in 5 years is very, very few and far between for any investor.
And hit a single, it's all about hitting that single. It's about
Yeah.
doing a deal. And it's not about the money you'll
Absolutely.
make, it's about the experience
Woo.
so you can do it much faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, my takeaway that the thing that really stuck out to me today that I know I need to work on myself is just that focus, staying in focus. So I thank you for that. Thank you. So as I would love to have you issue a challenge to our listeners. What's one thing
Mm.
our listeners can take action on this week?
I would say start your brag list. And what do I mean
Ooh.
by that is post it within your community, post it wherever you need to post it, but start to come from like women really need to own what they're great at, and
Ooh,
women really need to be able to brag about themselves. And that helps with
I love
negotiation.
it.
That
Yes.
helps about creative financing. That helps about getting deals. like we can't undersell ourselves. And,
Mhm.
I think we're at a point that it's not serving anyone
Yeah,
to do that. And I think a lot of women are under the radar and they undersell themselves.
I
So
agree.
I would say like create your brag list. And that might be
Yes.
skills, that might be experiences, that might be what you just do like amazingly well. And it also is a way to maybe potentially learn more about one another and potentially build partnerships, get to know people, network
Yep.
with each other. I would create your brag list. And if you are not sure, I would give you a challenge to really ask at least one person in your inner circle, someone that trusts, likes, and respects you. We all
Mhm.
have those people.
Yep.
What do I do great? What do you think is like the reason I'm on this earth? There are people who can answer that question for you. Because I
Yeah.
think we undersell ourselves so much that we're not like, I don't even know what I do well. Some days I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what I do well.
Yeah.
So we need that mirror, and people can be that mirror for you. So I would challenge you to write your brag list, post it somewhere public. And if you're not sure, ask one person in your network what you do exceptionally well.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So we are giving you permission to shout yourself out.
Yes.
Brag about something because you are amazing. You have gifts, you have abilities that the world needs to hear about. So don't be ashamed of them. I love it. Let's brag, ladies.
Yeah.
This is your time. Liz, this has been amazing. And I certainly thank you for coming on the podcast today. I
Tressa, thank you
know,
so much.
well, yeah, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
Sure. So the our website, the real estate investor, HER.com, is where a lot of everything we have going on there is, and just free resources, free events we're doing, all that good stuff. And yeah, please reach out. We have a Facebook community, and I'm very active in there. I tend to be very active there in terms of just support and hearing
I
what people
love it.
are needing and wanting. So I think it's the Investor community, HER, in Facebook too, is
Okay.
our free community.
All right, ladies, reach out. Well, if you heard something that helped you today, please share this podcast with a friend. Be sure to hit follow, leave us an honest review, and let us just know that we're making an impact and helping reach more women. So, thank you for listening today. On behalf of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network, I'm Tresa Todd, encouraging you to be brave and dream big.